Oi, budge!
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 Comparison is something that's been around forever, but isn't necessarily a negative thing.
We're comparing ourselves with so many more people, so we're going to feel inadequate. It goes down to a craving for likes rather than an inspiration and setting a good example.
Yeah, okay.
Most people don't know what their strengths and virtues are. It's doing things for the right reasons and getting back to the human values that we've got.
But what we're saying is if you want to be successful in the long term, build your likability around your friend. Welcome to Budge, back to Budge, how to fudge being human, our podcast on behavioural science, nudge theory, and a little bit of psychology to help you being better at being human. And today we're talking about mental health and comparison, the impact that social media has through comparison on your mental health. And of course, as always, I'm joined by Dr. Darren Coppin, behavioural scientist, speaker, writer, lover, and of course, #1 influencer on both Truth Social and MySpace.
True. Mr. Paul Miles, Managing Director, thanks for having me, of the Busy Group, one of Australia's largest training, employment and education organisations, and owner of a pair of Kardashian butt lift pants.
It's all true. It's all true. And they work so well. Mate, who do you know out of the following people? And I might actually get this pronunciation wrong because I'm famous for my pronunciations. 𝗙𝗪𝗙𝗢𝗪 or lame, 𝗙𝗪𝗙𝗪𝗙. You know who he is?
Not familiar.
Again, I'll mess this one up. Charlie D'Amelio?
No. Not.
Bella Porch?
No.
Addison Rae?
No.
Will Smith?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Were you going to slap me if I just said no?
I was going to do it. It wouldn't have been the first time either. So those are the top 5 TikTokers. Ǩabi, he has 153 million followers as we speak. And of course, number 5 is Will Smith, which is probably the only person that you would know of. And the other 3 are all people that I know my 10-year-old knows. But it's fascinating. Who do you think is the #1 person on Instagram?
Prince Charles. King Charles. I don't know.
Ronaldo.
Really?
He's also #1. Yeah, Ronaldo's also #1 bloke, person, human on Facebook too, just after Facebook itself.
No way.
Yeah, Ronaldo. But #2 though on Insta is Kylie Jenner. So we've called this episode "Keeping Up with the Kardashians." We've got Brody, executive producer, here with us today, and we've also got my daughter Angel. Angel, which Kardashian is Kylie Jenner?
Don't you know which Kardashian Kylie Jenner?
Do you know which Kardashian's which?
Yes, she's the one with the. She's actually apparently the richest of the lot of them.
Billionaire.
Got her own makeup line, etc., and butt lift pant line. No,
it's very valuable. But we are of course, massive growth in social media. There's a whole group of these people. Some of them are very famous, like your Will Smiths and your Ronaldos, even the Jenners and the Kardashians. Some of them, of course, some of us have never even heard of. But of course, it's resulting in people following these people and trying to compare their lives to them. Every book will tell you that the richest people in the world are consistently, or the vast majority of millionaires are actually over the age of 45. The 90% of millionaires in Australia are actually through property. Yet we continuously compare ourselves to these individuals who've got famous predominantly through social media, particularly those TikTokers. They are literally famous for social media. And of course, Kylie Jenner, infamously famous for a whole range of other things, but has absolutely used social media to her benefit to become, I think, the youngest billionaire in history. So we have this thing where so many of us compare ourselves through social media, and it is impacting on mental health. People are now pings on their phones, the psychology of the ping on their phone. We all seen Social Dilemma and how that works. But the pings on our phones, the number of likes we get, are actually impacting people's mental health. And I know you've been looking into this, mate. Is this actually true? Is comparison through social media affecting us the way we think it is?
Yes. From what we can tell, and just through common sense, talking with people. But of course, comparison is something that we've had from our deep evolutionary past. It's a fast track to learning when you watch and compare yourself with other people and watch how they do things or how they get good at stuff. You learn how to be like them or how not to be like them, and it helps to establish you as you're growing up and put you in the social structure, the hierarchy of our tribe or our family groups. Of course, the problem we've got now is the mismatch between, we used to compare ourselves to 25 to 30 people in our immediate family, up to 200. for 95 to 99% of human history of our community. But now we're comparing ourselves with 7.9 billion other people.
Actually, it's not. We're comparing ourselves with 4.62 billion. That's the amount of social media users.
People that are online.
Yeah, social media.
But the people that rise to the top in any population will be on social media.
Really?
So it's the people that have,
Just make that up.
No, but logically, if you're famous or good or fast or whatever now, then you become famous no matter where you come from.
Yeah.
So the pool is 7.9 billion, I'd argue, still.
And you know, it's funny, I do that thing now where I don't worry about business cards, I do the whole LinkedIn thing. And when someone says to me they're not on LinkedIn, I'm kind of like, oh, do you even exist? And it's just like, my brother-in-law never used to use social media at all, and now he's on Facebook, you know, but I always find it so strange that people that aren't on Facebook.
Yeah, it's weird, because Facebook, the biggest growth is in, I think it's the over 50s,
yeah,
and the biggest loss is with the under 21s, which is why Facebook had to buy Instagram to still appeal to that lot, and Ronaldo lovers by the sounds of it.
He's the man, isn't he? It's so true though, isn't it? I've said this before about the model is that, you know, they create for the younger population, and then us old fellas get on it, and then they go off and do something far different. You know? Yeah. So what you're saying, so we have come up with 3 takeaways. What we're going to try and do with the BUDGE podcast from now is come up with takeaways for people around some of the issues that we talk about. Talk about the behavioural science around these issues. Talk about the nudge theory, psychology around these issues, but then come up with some takeaways that people can use so that in this instance, comparison through social media doesn't impact their mental health. But what you're saying to me already, mate, is that comparison is something that's been around forever, but isn't necessarily a negative thing.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of theories that social comparison theory suggests that if you compare well against others, then it boosts your self-worth, your inherent motivation, your well-being. But it can become a one-upmanship constantly. And again, when you used to compare yourself with 50 other people, then it's not, because when you're really good at something, when you find your niche in a community because you're particularly good at something, and other people comparing themselves to you, there's always a bit of a downside. So say you're the most beautiful person, then you're being constantly hassled by people.
Yeah.
This gets back to Smurfette in the Smurfs. she was the most beautiful lady amongst the Smurfs, but it must have been a real pain in the backside sometimes, being hassled all the time. But if you're the best hunter, then you get sort of thrust out in the most dangerous situations. If you're the best leader or organiser, then you have to confront issues all the time. So there was a downside, but people were able to find out what they're good at, find their niche, contribute to their communities, build up a degree of self-worth and value in their communities. And so comparison wasn't so extreme, and it wasn't so put downable, whereas now you can never measure up. You know what humans are like, we're highly competitive, we have this hedonic adaptation and treadmill, so we're always feeling inadequate, and that's the bottom line of this, what we call the Kardashian complex, is this feeling of inadequacy, and that's where the issue kicks in. One of the three places where there are issues with comparison in today's world through social media, or facilitated.
But before we come on to that though, in terms of that comparison, you talk about extremities. Of course, the impact of social media is the acuteness.
Hang on, you're comparing our extremities.
There's no comparison. It's the acuteness of this. It's the acuteness of this, isn't it? It's the fact that yes, you could be doing well in going well, but then when the down comes very quickly, and it's so acute, and that could have quite an impact. And also the other side of it is because you've got this massive population looking at you. It's interesting. I actually remember you and I were talking about a subject in a previous podcast, and we didn't cover one particular subject in enough detail for somebody on the internet. So we got criticised on the internet for not covering enough about this issue around it. And you see that where people try to do something really good on the internet, but because they might miss out on, say, a certain type of person with disability, or a certain issue around gender, or a certain issue around age or something, then those populations then get very critical when, of course, the intention was to do something good. So there's that much more acute and come down, and there's also that far more broad range of views that you're sort of subjecting yourself to. Yeah,
there's a few things you touched on, and we've spoken about negativity bias before. You get 18 praises in your review at work from your manager. Oh, you're great at this, you're great at that. And then as soon as they say, but there's one thing where you've got room for improvement, and quite often that's the only thing you remember.
Yes.
And you feel down with that. And it's, again, a survival instinct. If you focus on the things, the negatives, then you're more likely to survive if you address those and big those up. And then you're not going to be blundering blindly into issues.
So straight away, and I suspect you'll be coming on to this later on, does that mean that as humans who do use social media to enable it to not impact our mental health, we have to come over this deeply involved negativity bias? Otherwise, we can, exist in this social media world where everything's going great and you get one negative comment and all of a sudden the impact to you is far more acute than potentially prior to social media being around.
Yeah, I mean, the key points are we are comparing ourselves with so many more people, so we're going to feel inadequate anyway. We're not always going to be the best, and we can't help as a species, as a human, to try and match or better that. Secondly, we haven't generally built self-worth, particularly young people haven't had a chance to build self-worth and internal confidence and competence so that they can batter off any criticism or cope with it. We avoid any sort of negative emotions and criticism. And thirdly, though, and it comes onto this negativity bias, if you think about the voice inside your head or your voice inside your car, it's always negative. Now think about being a keyboard jockey. When you type something out with someone, there's no comeback for you. Now, you wouldn't dream of saying something like that to somebody's face, but it will come. The impact on that person, you can be a terrible troll without even realising the impact you're going to have. And that lack of comeback and not having to look someone in the eye as you say something can be really negative and disproportionately negative.
Because these are the three comparisons that you've come up with today through social media compared to prior to social media, which you've already talked about. You've got the massive number of people out there and the mismatch. You've got this self-worth issue, but you do have your keyboard jockeys who are invisible, and we classically say sat in their mum's basement, typing about how ugly you are whilst they stuff their face with pizza.
Speaking from personal experience.
That's not my profile. And of course there's a whole raft of things there around what governments should or shouldn't be doing in terms of making sure that people identify on social media. So you're saying those three reasons are why today social media and the impact it has on mental health and comparison is so very different to what we have historically.
Yes, but actually there's something else that we've got deep set in us that people are unaware of, and it's called tall poppy syndrome in Australia, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. For most of human history, we've had very egalitarian societies, so as soon as someone becomes really big-headed about, say, being the best hunter, then the people mock them, and it's coming from a place of kindness and love and good for society, and they kind of take it in the right spirit. So there's a lot of examples I've been reading up on where somebody would get the best antelope, bring it back into their San community, and they go, "Oh, is that all? What a tiddler!" People say that to them.
Sorry, how do you even? Is this?
This is true.
How do we know this?
Because it's been recorded by anthropologists and people living with them.
Okay, I see, right, okay.
Yeah, and
we're not necessarily talking about thousands of years ago.
We're talking about modern hunter-gatherer
that's a serious wallcraft.
Yeah.
And then I made this joke about what a small antelope.
But yeah, and you can see that will be a trait throughout human history, this tall poppy knocking down. And it's actually a good thing because there's this great bloke, Bruce Parry, who's made all these series living with indigenous societies for the BBC, and he said he was in the Congo, and this guy was a great hunter and everyone sort of lauded him, well done, but as soon as he started getting a big head about it and a bit of bravado, then the people back at the camp would refuse to cook his food.
Oh, really?
And the people would refuse to go out hunting with him. And so it brought him back down again.
Yeah, okay.
So there is this thing, and for most people, is that all you brought back, a tiddler? You go, they're mocking you, but it's this thing, it's this trait that's been seen in every indigenous society that I've read up on, is that they bring you back down to earth so that you're level and equal, but deep down you've got that self-worth, that value that, I'm bloody good at this, and I'm contributing to my community. Whereas now, what you're going for, what a lot of people are going for is fame and status without necessarily any of these negative trappings. So if they're the best hunter, but oh God, we're being threatened by this 𝗖𝗛𝗘𝗢𝗥 cat, you better go out and get it. It's like, bloody, I'm not really that good at hunting.
Yeah.
You know, there's this downside, but what's the downside other than the deep psychological issues of fame? It's all really positive.
Yeah. So for some reason, the Kenneth Branagh character from Harry Potter, the wizard that has got all the books and all the fame, but actually doesn't know how to do the spell.
Ah, yes, yeah. There's this superficiality, and it comes back. There's a guy who's the chief, I think it's the chief science officer now of the American Psychological Society, Mitch Sunstein, and he's done a lot of research and writing on popularity. And he said there's two kinds of popularity. One is likability. So you're kind of generous in your popularity, you get on with other people, you make them feel better when they hang out with you. And then there's status, and that's when you're a dominant person, you're top of mind with everyone, people look to you what you're wearing, but actually people generally don't like you. And the thing is, as an adolescent, when you haven't really got your prefrontal cortex kicking in and what have you, you go for status, and it's literally called status on social media, and you go for likes, and you haven't earned that likability. It's a superficial thing, a bit like what you're saying with the Kenneth Branagh character. So it's creating this hollowness where most people are going for status. Now, when you track those individuals, and there have been studies tracking people that were really popular at high school, they're much more susceptible to depression, relationship and employment issues later on in life, whereas the likeable people actually more likely to succeed and be more healthy, interestingly. So we have this sort of capacity, and it's facilitated much more to go for status now than likability.
Well, it's facilitated because of social media.
Because of social media, because you're sticking up. We all know the Instagram-tastic filtered bullshit life that you put on Instagram, living your best life, and sucking your stomach in when the pictures are taken,
and getting the cameras to go higher up so they don't see all your chins.
Do you know how difficult these podcasts are? Sucking my stomach in whilst talking. Anyway,
I'm trying to always look up to camera.
Anyway, so it is massively facilitated by social media, this unaccountability for people to knock you down, but this superficiality of your status and your popularity through status rather than what you've done and what you've achieved.
Okay, so if we take, I'm trying to think of so some of these TikTokers potentially, what you're saying is that you take someone like Will Smith, and I know there's all the issues around his absolute major brain explosion this year, but in terms of someone like him being fifth on TikTok, he's got like a legacy already of amazing films and awards and all the rest of it, whereas the four people ahead of him, who are predominantly famous for jumping around, and 𝗷𝗙𝗢𝗪𝗓 is famous for sort of taking the mick out of awful hacks that people put on social media. There's potentially a long-term come down for them unless they actually develop some sort of likability and actual genuine sort of provision of something for their communities.
Yes, substance.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you've come up with 3 takeaways, mate, around comparison, right? 3 takeaways as to how you don't allow social media to affect your mental health through comparison. What are these, mate?
I can't remember. I quoted them to you earlier.
Oh, that was. In that case, I'll tell you. So the first one we just been talking about, likability, not status. So how do I actually, on social media, am I trying to develop a persona for myself which is actually around who I am as a likable person? Or am I trying to develop, avoiding the status thing? Or is it more a case that when I look at people, like, let's not name names, but certain people are on there, but they're famous for being famous. When I look at them, I recognise them for what they are, as opposed to people who have real likability because of social media. Yeah,
actually, I've got a real genuine example of this to illustrate that, and it's from my beautiful wife. She used to work indirectly for the Kardashians as a designer for the Kardashian collection.
I was going to mention this sooner. I forgot this.
Yeah, and she's
probably responsible for those pants I wear, the uplift ones.
Well, she's an expert in lycra. So, but The Kardashians annoyed me. Like, they really got under my skin because it was this famous for being famous thing, and got the leg up from a sex tape or whatever.
We've all been there.
We've all tried. And anyway, she had to be round their house. I think it was Kourtney Kardashian was heading up the meeting at 5 a.m. And she got into their house, and it was just rampant with loads of people there, lawyers, merchandisers, marketers. Now, they'd been to like a club opening or something the night before, they'd only had about 4 hours sleep. They were down in their dressing gowns, surrounded by all these people, merchandising, marketing them and pushing them, promoting them. And then she had to, Kourtney had to look at all of the dresses and say, oh, I like that, not that. And so they're working so hard. Their work ethic is incredible.
So this isn't a joke, is it? Because I mean, I've gone. Unsurprisingly, I've never met a Kardashian. And the obvious thing on social media here is that when you talk about the Kardashians, people say, "Oh, they're famous for being famous. They don't actually do anything. They just waste their time." And my similar thing is I was brought up around a lot of politicians and they get the same sort of thing. And in my work, I involve myself with a lot of politicians, and they get the same negativity. Yet I see these guys working 24. I don't know how they do it. The amount that they work, and so we're saying the same as the Kardashians. They get all this negativity about being lazy and famous, being famous, and all this sort of thing. But what your wife experienced was actually these guys are working their butts off.
Yeah,
and it's just incredibly full on. My
point is the Kardashian series eradicates that. They gloss that over. So you see the nuance and the made up friction and the soap opera of it, or you see the glamour of it in magazines. But what they should really be promoting is how bloody hard they work and how clever they are.
Do you think they should be though? Because is that demographic they're chasing? Because it seems that the most people that do follow the Kardashians and purchase all their goods, their makeup, their clothes, the rest of it, are not necessarily thinking about it to this extent. They are pretending.
They just want that glamour brand,
and they are just buying into the status.
Yeah,
so it does actually matter to them.
It should matter as a human. You should value that more than just they've got a great makeup artist on that particular day.
But they would know how hard they work. They would know how much effort they put into what they achieve.
They would, and perhaps that's why they've got the resilience and self-worth to be able to put up with all the knockbacks and
it is constant. It is constant,
Yeah, but it should be recognised. And you see a lot of people, this Fitspiration sort of movement, Fitspro, where you try and inspire others by showing that you're working out and losing weight and what have you. But there's this, philosophers call it pornification of it becomes less and less about how you do a certain exercise and more like the shot with your backside in this exceedingly tight workout pants. And it goes down to a craving for likes rather than an inspiration and setting a good example.
Yeah, okay.
It goes down that line because the currency is how many clicks and likes you get.
And then if you look at social media around that fitness influence thing, it does. They're the ones that have got the most amount of likes. But what we're saying is, if you want to be successful in the long term, build your likability around your fitness brand. Yeah,
but it depends on what is your success, and it's your own psychological success and happiness and well-being, because that person's going down a route that only ends in OnlyFans. And just craving likes, and if the number of likes drop off, then that impacts them substantially. So it's doing things for the right reasons and getting back to the human values that we've got. Yeah,
good. Okay, that was the first thing you said in terms of the takeaway. So takeaway is likability over status. Learn what you're good at. What did you mean by that?
Well, we don't have, like I said, finding your niche in a community, and all the ancient philosophers wrote about working out what your virtues are, what your strengths are, finding those out, and then doing those, maximising those, and being a contributor using what you're good at. Because then it doesn't matter if someone takes the mickey out of you, like being a good hunter or being the best cooker or organiser or whatever, or baby nurturer or teacher, because you know you're bloody good at that. So if somebody says, oh, your hair looks ridiculous today, you don't go running off and crying your eyes out for the rest of the day. You say, oh God, does it? Yeah, but I'm getting on with being great at what I'm great at. But most people don't know what their strengths and virtues are.
Okay. And then finally, the third, you talked about contributing to communities, so actually creating something in social media that contributes to the community is how you overcome the comparison.
Yeah, it's difficult. Only in the last month, Zuckerberg's gone on about talking about a global community and how Facebook and Alphabet can be central to that on the Google side and Facebook, and how they can really push that. But he actually recognised that we need to bring that back. We can't just expand this global community without local communities, and we want Facebook to contribute towards that, and Instagram. And help you connect for real locally, because it's just hollow, this global community. It means nothing, and people say you can't create a global community if you don't have global values. But we do have global human values. Every religion has the same kind of set of rules and cultural expectations, but even he's recognising we need to get out and contribute to community for real, through our skills and virtues and our self-worth. And actually see people face to face, and press the flesh with people, and make real eye contact, because that's what matters. You were just so resisting making a joke on pressing the flesh, weren't you?
And making eye contact. Mate, thank you for those takeaways. Likeability, not status. Learn what you're good at. Contribute to community. They're the three things you need to focus on if you want to not have comparison affect your mental health through social media. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We're on LinkedIn, and we're on Facebook. And soon we're going to be launching our own Facebook and LinkedIn groups, so we can talk about behavioural science in a lot more detail. Any final inspiring words, sir? No,
I mean, those LinkedIn and Facebook groups are basically creating a community.
Whoa.
Yes. But
which adds and contributes to everything.
Yeah, and we can communicate.
It's not all about your status, Dan. Thanks everyone for watching. Please give us your shares, your likes, your reshares, your comments on whatever social media platform you are using. Thanks. Watch again.